Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. Listeners, we've got a two-part episode coming your way that I will tell you about momentarily. First, as always, wanted to give a shout out to our presenting chess education sponsors, Chessable.com. They've got courses to help you with any aspect of your game that you'd like to work on. Some new ones by Sam Shanklin, Maurice Ashley, so many legends making courses. So I'll link to their What's New page, as well as to some of my favorites, which include courses like the Woodpecker Method, the Checkmate Patterns Manual, and the list goes on. So just be sure to go to Chessable.com, take a look around, and find something to help you work on or enhance your enjoyment of this great game called chess. Now, today's guests are two different people in the global chess community doing things to help grow, promote, and make the game safer. So I kind of wanted to spotlight, there's so many unsung heroes in the chess world, so many people donating their time, and I wanted to tell the story of two people who are doing important things to make chess more enjoyable and safer for everyone. So first up is Emilia Castelao. Emilia is a history grad student, a chess historian, a photographer, and she has now co-founded an initiative called the Women in Chess Foundation. Its goal, as you will hear Emilia discuss, is to make sure there's representatives at every chess tournament that takes place to help ensure a safe playing environment. So it was great to hear Emilia's story, and we talk about other stuff as well. Following Emilia's interview, you can catch an interview with Craig Dubose, and Craig is running a chess tournament in Sligo, Ireland. You can look up the Sligo Chess Tournament. It's in early February in 2024, and it's just a 5-round tournament, you know, what they call a typical weekend tournament. But Craig is really working hard to promote the tournament and try to improve conditions. He commissioned a documentary about last year's event. So he's just donating a lot of time to try to put on one good tournament. And I wanted to help share his story. Obviously, if you're looking for a vacation in Ireland, or if you live in that part of the world, the tournament sounds well worth checking out. So Sligo Chess Tournament, early February 2024. And you can also check out the documentary wherever in the world you are. So again, there's so many people doing so much for chess, and unfortunately putting out one episode or so a week, I can't tell everyone's stories, but in this case, I'm excited to help amplify the voices of a couple people and let you guys hear from our two members of our global chess community. So as always, timestamps are in the show description, both of the times of different guests as well as the topics discussed and any links referenced. Speaking of links, while I have you here, don't forget to subscribe to my free weekly chess newsletter, the Perpetual Chess Link Fest. You can Google that, or I'll link to that as well. And without further ado, I will get you to our interviews. So first up is Emilia Castelao, and second is Craig Dubose. Thanks for listening/watching, and here they are. And we are here with Emilia Castelao. She is a chess historian, a grad student, and a photographer. She has a particular interest in the Soviet era. She's also collaborating with Mr. Dodgy, who those of you who are on Twitter know well, and others may have heard on previous episodes or behind the scenes of the Chicken Chess Club. Anyway, they're launching an important new initiative called the Women in Chess Foundation, and I'm excited to discuss that as well as the rest of Emilia's life in and out of chess. So let's welcome Emilia Castelao to the show. Welcome, Emilia.
Hi, nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to chat. We've of course corresponded online a bit, but one of those online friendships where we've never connected in person. And I just found out that you're American, Emilia. So because I knew that you are a grad student in Vienna, Austria, a history grad student, and correct me if I say anything incorrect along the way. But so how did you end up in Vienna?
Yeah, so I am American. I'm from New Orleans. I did my undergraduate at the University of Notre Dame in history and global affairs. And then afterwards, I didn't want to get a real job. And so I decided to go to grad school in Europe. And I applied to a bunch of schools and decided to come to Vienna because I had never been here before and wanted to live somewhere new. So that is how I ended up here.
Excellent. And you enjoying life there?
Oh, I love life here. It's
Yeah.
really underrated for sure. I think everyone should come here to
Yeah,
Vienna.
as I briefly said to you before we were recording, I only spent a couple of days in Vienna, but it's a charming city, although of course New Orleans has a special place in my heart as well. So, But let's bring this to chess, Emilia. So, I mean, we've got a lot to talk about because you've got a wide range of interests under the umbrella of chess. But the news of the day, as it were, we're recording this on October 6th. And if all goes according to plan, next week, you and Mr. Dodgy will be launching a new initiative called the Women in Chess Foundation. So what was I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask you anyway. What was the impetus for this project?
Yeah, so I really kind of started getting into the chess world last summer when I wrote a paper on the implications of chess in international diplomacy, like Soviet era chess. Um, and that's ultimately how I met Mr. Dodgy and Lula Robs. Um, and in March, when the article came out about Alejandro Ramirez, um, not only that, but from my experiences going to tournaments in throughout kind of the 6-ish months that I had really started doing like chess photography and stuff. I went to Vicon Z and I also went to Tepe Siegman and a few other tournaments, and just seeing the way that women were not even really present at these high level tournaments, really barely, and to see the way that the women were treated at these tournaments. Then with the Alejandro Ramirez thing coming to light and Jen giving her statement about that, Dodgy and I had very long Google meetings about how we could possibly begin to solve the problem, find a way to kind of create a community outside of the institutions, outside of already established clubs and federations where women could come together and feel like they could safely talk about what they had gone through and have an actionable thing to do about the problem as well.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously admirable. And first of all, I mean, it's disappointing to hear. Obviously, I know that Lula has had her own negative experiences, and we're referring to Lula Roberts, who pretty well-known Twitch streamer, obviously. Also, I interviewed her after the Olympiad, so some of you listening may have heard that. So she had some negative experiences, but I'm disappointed to hear that even in like a quite limited time traveling to international tournaments, so it wasn't just stuff that you were hearing from the not enough women that were there, but also stuff that you witnessed personally.
hmm Yeah, stuff that I witnessed personally, and also stuff that happened to me, just the interactions that I had with men at tournaments, even though I wasn't playing, just kind of the disrespect that I received, like being a photographer there, um, was really quite shocking, considering that like chess should be one of the safest sports in the world, considering that like it's really just, an over the board game. You're thinking, you're not talking much, but then you have these then I had these experiences with men where I just felt like watched almost at these tournaments, especially being alone as a female. I generally felt unsafe. At Tepe Siegman, I was with Dodgy and also Peter Schvidler, who I'm close friends with, and like I felt safer there because I had friends. But when I went to Tepe Siegman, I was alone, and it was an odd experience, to say the least.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but can't say I'm shocked, unfortunately, based on obviously recent news and just having grown up in the chess world and seen a few things myself. I do like to think that the fact that an initiative like this is even coming into being, to me, suggests okay, things are slowly moving in the right direction, but progress never comes fast enough. And obviously, you and Lula and those who have encountered much worse should never have to experience these things. So when it comes to the foundation, so you want women to have a safe space, but from my understanding, you guys also have some sort of concrete initiatives in mind. Could you discuss what those are, Emilia?
Definitely. So our first big initiative and the main one that we're focusing on is our advocacy initiatives, which hopes to put an independent advocate at every single chess tournament so that people who do experience misconduct can, um, rather than maybe go directly to a tournament organizer or an arbiter, which can be a really scary experience, they can go to someone who has been trained to understand and provide the correct resources to survivors and work with them to come up with a plan for how they want to move forward. And then beyond that, hopefully in conjunction, we are working with clubs and federations to do safe play guideline reform. So, because as much as the advocacy initiative is an attempt to, in a way, deter misconduct from happening, but also put those systems in place so that survivors are prioritized if they do choose to report, and having that support system there. What really is going to change things is if clubs and federations put in place those prevention policies, those reporting mechanisms, in order to ensure that there is a clear process that is and that knowledge is available to survivors should they choose to report, and having it be a survivor oriented policy is really what we're aiming for. And lastly is marketing women's chess. We always, well, Dodgy and I had noticed that we really get to know male chess players and we don't necessarily get to know female chess players the same way. So, helping with marketing women's events, giving clubs and federations kind of the baseline tools on how to do that and do it effectively. We have a lot of goals for the future, but that's like our three main initiatives at the moment.
That's amazing. And this is a nonprofit, we should say. And
hmm
and what do you guys have in mind for how the training would take place? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who feel like they'd like to pitch in. How would a person interested go about that? Go about being trained?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. Essentially, you would go on our website that we are launching on Monday, womeninchess.com, and we have an advocacy tab. And in that tab, you can learn more about what we teach for the advocacy initiative. So we teach what advocacy is, um, understanding how trauma and misconduct show up in chess compared to other workplaces, as well as like safety planning and crisis intervention and other advocacy skills. If someone wanted to become an advocate, they could go to our Become an Advocate page and fill out the form. Um, there are some eligibility requirements, like you have to be 18 and have, an interest in chess, and but really advocates can be anyone. It could be a mom who takes her children to chess tournaments, or uh, a regular player at a club. We want it to be a wide range of people so that we have a diverse kind of group being advocates. And once you kind of sign up, we'll review the application. All of our advocates do have to be background checked. So we'll go through that kind of administrative process and they'll pick a day for training. We have 4 dates in the near future. So October 15th, November 5th, November 18th, and December 3rd are our future advocacy trainings. We'll sign you up, get you all in check for everything, and you'll get trained. And afterwards, when all of the paperwork is processed and through, and you've done your final assessment, you'll receive a certificate of completion and you can be an advocate. And we're hoping to work with clubs and federations to relay that information to them as well, saying, this person is an advocate in your area or in your local club. If you could please publicize that information so that others can know about it and reach out to them if they need. We'll have that information available to them. And we also have that information on our website, so you can find an advocate directly through our website as well.
Okay. That's excellent. And so you say it can be a parent, it can be a local club member. Can it be a participant within a tournament?
Yes,
Like,
of course.
okay, just making sure, because on the one hand, I understand, like, on the one hand, obviously that means you're not going to be available every minute if you're playing, but on the other hand, it obviously greatly increases the availability of advocates, and in my mind makes it much more, much more likely that there will be one at every tournament, which certainly I
Mhm.
uh, share that goal. Um, and the website, we should say, so it should be live by the time this comes out. So, and what about in terms of, hopefully, knock on wood, this doesn't happen, or happens with decreasing frequency, but there's an incident that wants to be reported. How does the participant know who the advocate is?
Yeah, so by working with tournaments, we um, are in a way mandating that at the beginning of each round, the tournament organizer, during the brief announcements that happen, say, hey, this is the advocate at this tournament. Should you need anything, please reach out to them. Also, we're planning on having an identification that advocates can wear during tournaments as well.
Okay, that's great. Excellent. Well, obviously, I'm on board. I'm gonna do the advocacy training now that I know about it, because I mean, we need to cast a wide net, right? I mean, there's so many tournaments and they all have different scopes. So I'm sure the more people trying to help out, the better. Um, is there anything else? Because Emilia, I want to talk about your other chess related interests as well while I have you here. So is there anything else in terms of the Women in Chess Foundation that listeners should know up front?
Yeah, I really want to stress that obviously the Women in Chess Foundation, we are focused on improving the environment of chess and chess tournaments for women, but we really also are for everyone. We want chess to be safe for everyone, not, you know, just women, the LGBTQ community, minorities, and men as well. There are possibly some instances that we may not know about uh, in terms of men experiencing misconduct, but that is way more underreported than women. So, if you're a man and want to become an advocate, like that is absolutely something we would love. And this community is really just open for everyone. And we're hoping to not only empower women, but make chess safer for everyone.
Okay, excellent. And so the main things in terms of like actionable items, if people listening want to help out, is to go to the website and possibly volunteer to be an advocate.
Mhm.
Um, and if there's anything, say someone's listening and for whatever reason they feel like maybe they don't get to enough tournaments, or just logistically unable to volunteer to be an advocate, is there anything else they can do to help support this endeavor?
Yeah, so they can register to be a volunteer, but also something about our advocacy program is that it is available for people remotely and online. So if you want to talk to an advocate, you don't necessarily have to be going to a tournament. You can request to speak to an advocate just over the phone or over Zoom, and we can set that up for you as well.
Okay, sounds good. Excellent. Well, Amelia, let's talk about chess a bit more broadly. So I read that you got into it as a kid, but it sounds like your interest really took hold in the past couple of years, and now you've kind of zeroed in on chess history aside from this initiative that we just discussed. But first of all, how did you get into chess generally?
Yeah, so I went to chess camp in when I was like I started playing when I was 4. My dad taught me how to play. I really got into it when I went to chess camp in 5th grade. But in New Orleans, there's not a huge chess community. It's only popping up like very recently, but when I was growing up, there weren't any tournaments or anything that I could really participate in. So it kind of went on the back burner and I did other things. But when I moved to Vienna, I moved like in July and I didn't start school until October and I was a grad student, so I didn't have a job and I had a lot of free time. So I did a lot of reading and I really got into reading about Soviet chess history and, Bobby Fischer and the 1972 World Championships. And I just was so intrigued kind of by because I go to the diplomatic academy and I love diplomacy and kind of how international relations works, and I was really intrigued about how diplomacy was kind of showing up in these places, but not necessarily talked about or pointed out by anyone. And so I uh, started writing an article for Epic Magazine. It's a history magazine, um, and published that. And uh, also went to my first chess tournament. I went to Sitges in Barcelona, which is where I met Dodgy and Lula. And that was kind of my throwing into the deep end of how I got into chess.
Amazing. Yeah. And so could you say a bit more about what you wrote about the history magazine?
Yeah, of course. So I wrote about how um, the Soviet Union essentially used chess as a means of diplomacy during the Cold War and how it was a really important line of communication to the US. Really, it kind of through like the chess tournaments that the USSR would organize as well as the US, when these players were there, you also had sightings of politicians both from the USSR and the US. And when you look through kind of the priorities of these politicians, it was to organize these chess tournaments and make sure that they happened. And in kind of sources that you read now afterwards that have been published, you see that a lot of, important communication in international affairs um, were conducted here in through chess.
Yeah, and I personally, I love. I mean, I love chess history generally, but yeah, especially the sort of Soviet angle because it sort of cuts so deep when you get into, as you say, like people working for the KGB and the collusion that definitely happened in some cases, and the immigration tales, as I often talk about. It cuts such a sort of it casts a long shadow in terms of it goes beyond chess. So I love it as well. Do you have any favorite resources, anything you read or watched that you would recommend to listeners?
Um, I mean, one of my favorite books is Endgame by Frank Brady. I think it's a incredible book. It's done very well. Um, as well as it actually was done by the Champions Chess Tour when uh David Howell went to Iceland and like visited Bobby Fischer's grave. They did like a whole video on that, and it was actually extremely well produced. I really enjoyed it. Um, if people want to learn more about chess history, I would obviously say just honestly start online. There's so many resources, especially because it's funny. Chess historians like in academia itself, in the academic community, there aren't really at all any historians that are employed by universities that um, actually study chess and chess history and publish papers on it. But there are chess historians really everywhere publishing online. I know Edward Winter is one of them. He has a lot of great resources. I love just kind of going through his website and seeing what I can find.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. It's called Chess Notes. And definitely echo the Endgame recommendation, which is a Bobby Fischer biography. And I interviewed Frank Brady and discussed that book among other things a couple years back. And Profile of a Prodigy is worth reading as well, although I do like Endgame a bit better. So yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And so, as you say, unfortunately, there aren't any sort of practicing professional chess historians, even though there's plenty of people devoting many hours to it and sharing lots of worthwhile knowledge. But are you? I know you've written in the past, sort of for your accreditation about chess. Are you able to continue doing that right now while you pursue your master's?
Yeah, so I actually will be writing my master's thesis on chess history and how much chess is like as a popular culture is important to politics. And it'll kind of it has to be an interdisciplinary thesis, so it'll be both historical and a modern day analysis as well. But um, hopefully, once that is done and published, eventually I would like to get my PhD. Maybe not right after my master's, especially if women in chess is successful, but um, I would like to get my PhD. I think that chess and popular culture as a tool of analysis for understanding broader topics like politics or economics is really important nowadays, for sure.
Yeah, and Emilia, you're a great photographer as well. You've at these tournaments that you've attended, you've shared some amazing pictures online. How did that interest come about?
It happened by accident actually in Sitges. I had brought my camera and I think Dodgy was playing and Lula was streaming, and so I had some extra time to kill, and I was just walking around with my camera and taking photos and kind of forgot how much I loved photography. I did it for um in high school. I did it for 4 years. I have a certificate of artistry in media art from the National Arts Foundation, and I was like, oh, I forgot how much I like this, and so I started taking photos and started going to tournaments, both to take photos for my thesis and because I was also doing thesis interviews at the time with players for like my qualitative mandatory requirement. And so I would take photos as well. And then I ended up being asked to go to a few tournaments, and I was like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hopefully you can continue to find time for that as well. And lastly, Emilia, so you're going to be followed on this podcast by an interview with Craig Dubose, who's running tournaments in Ireland. And I found it interesting, someone that's obviously passionate about chess. He got into it more in the past few years, like yourself, but also like yourself, like playing is, or let alone like studying and pursuing improvement is almost secondary to what he's doing. I mean, he's giving this sort of gift to the community by trying to run one really good tournament per year. And you're doing the same thing, perhaps even at a broader scale, attempting at a global scale by making the chess world more welcoming for everyone. So what I'm wondering is like, does playing fit into it for you? Do you play much? And if not, what makes you more interested in these other aspects of the game?
Yeah, I love playing chess actually. But I play very casually. I actually play at my local coffee shop here in Vienna. A few of my really good friends, all play chess. So we all gather there to play. I don't play online or in tournaments or anything. But I do enjoy the game a lot, and I really love watching chess. I like watching, the top level play and trying to think how they think. Um, and so I really do love the game, but it definitely is secondary for me. I think I love the community just like a tad bit more. In going to these tournaments, have met so many amazing people, um, and that kind of competitiveness of, wanting to play in tournaments just isn't there, but rather I just kind of love the sport and love the people and like hanging out and trying to give back to them as much as I can for giving me a space where I feel like I can be myself.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because obviously you rightfully highlighted some negative aspects of the chess community in terms of like the male to female gender ratio and just feelings of not necessarily being welcome. So how do you sort of, on the one hand, it sounds like you felt very welcome, but then there are these other situations where you don't feel welcome, but on balance, it's enough where it didn't just push you out of the chess world as has happened to many females over time. So do you think that's something in your personality that keeps you coming back? Or why do you think it is that you, despite some negative things, found enough good to devote a lot of time, obviously, to bettering the chess world?
Oh, that's a deep question. I think that I think maybe part of it is my personality. I think just from my childhood and my upbringing, I always kind of felt like the odd one out. And so even though like I've had these negative experiences, my positive experiences, especially, I really owe a lot of it to like my friendships with Lula and Dodgy and just how deep it runs and how much like we all care about each other. And that significantly outweighs like any negative experiences that I've had. But also, I will say any, I haven't had any like as bad of an experience as other women have. And so I am in a way grateful for that because I feel like being able to see it with my eyes, I can, you know, help them and try to solve this problem because I think that that care and that community that just doesn't really exist anywhere else can really flourish if we do like solve this problem and has made me want to stay. And hopefully as young girls are coming up through chess, like even though I've had some negative experiences, not as bad as others, I can hopefully make the community a better place for them.
I love it. Glad to hear it. So, Amelia, what's the URL again for the Women in Chess Foundation?
It is www.womeninchess.com.
Okay, excellent. And you're on Twitter. Anything else that listeners should be tuned into before we say goodbye?
Nope, just I'm on Twitter, so is Women in Chess. And we are looking forward to having anyone and everyone join us.
Okay, and thank you again for doing it. And yeah, I'll link to any relevant websites and social media and all that stuff for people listening in their cars and such. But Amelia, really appreciate it. Wish you great luck with this project, and please continue to let me know what I can do to help out.
For sure. Thank you. I appreciate your support.
And we are here with Craig Dubose. Craig is a tournament organizer based in Sligo in the Republic of Ireland. He's running a weekend tournament called the Sligo Tournament, February 2nd to February 4th, 2024. He's really working hard to get the word out about this tournament and to differentiate it from a lot of tournaments, not just in Europe, but everywhere. He even made a documentary that I really enjoyed about last year's event. And I'd just like to get some more perspective from what a young, ambitious tournament organizer has in mind to improve the tournament landscape. So let's welcome Craig to the show. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. And young, wow, thank you very much. I'm definitely on your side now.
Yep, got to butter up the guests.
Ask me anything.
Yep. Okay. Well, Craig, I'm really happy to have you, and I really admire all the work you're putting in. You reached out to me a couple times, and once you got my attention, and I took a look at what you were doing, I was super impressed. And I've said many times on the show that people like tournament organizers and local chess club facilitators are often the unsung heroes among many unsung heroes in the chess world. So I'm happy to help spotlight what you're doing. And also, just from a personal standpoint, after watching the documentary, I wish Ireland weren't so far away and that my family circumstances allowed me to come play because the tournament looks amazing. So let me ask you, Craig, I mean, you're doing all this outreach, laying all this groundwork for a tournament that's over, in 5 rounds, over in 1 weekend. So what is your why? What motivates you to work that hard to put on this annual event?
Obviously I'm a newcomer to the chess world somewhat. I got involved during the pandemic. But I think, ultimately, and I'm just an organizer. That's the kind of person I am. I'm an organizer, administrator, the person who just kind of decides he wants to do something and then just does it. And the reason I put so much work and effort and things into this is because I just want to be a great product. I want it to be a great experience. I've made a tournament, or not just myself, there are others as well, but we've created a tournament that I would want to attend. And that has all these little extra bits and pieces that just make it what I describe as a premium experience for players. So I think that's just it. It's pride. It's pride of wanting to do something great, and at the end of the day, having something amazing. And then, of course, the feedback, and people say we had a great time. this is a great tournament, keep it up, that sort of thing. I guess it's probably ego to some degree, but I guess the nice way of saying that is I just want to make a great product and something I can be proud of.
Right. Well, you say it's ego, but there's also a selflessness involved, because if you do have a great product, then people get a good experience out of it, which is a win-win. And you mentioned in some materials you sent me, Craig, that part of your motivation also was to help people bridge the gap from playing online to going and having a pleasant experience at tournaments. Now, did you have personal experience sort of trying to cross that bridge yourself?
I mean, my first tournament experience was down in a place called Ennis here in Ireland, down in the south, and it's great. It's probably like a lot of tournaments that people are used to, and honestly, it could have been anywhere. It could have been in a cargo container. It could have been outside under a bridge. Just playing the chess 90 minutes across from somebody else, serious game. I mean, that was amazing to me. And honestly, I probably wouldn't even noticed what was going on around me. It was, I just had a great time. So no, I wouldn't say I had a bad experience, but kind of seeing tournaments in general, not just in Ireland, but in other places, and online presence and social media, I just looked at it and thought, you know what, I could do something here. I could make an impact. I could make, do things a little bit higher level to some degree. So no, it wasn't that I had a bad experience. I had a great experience, but again, I initially thought I was going to play in the tournament. When the first year I thought, oh, I'll bring this FIDE rated, IC rated thing to Sligo, and then I'll play in it. It wasn't until later on in the process that I realized I'm not going to be able to play in this. There's going to be too many things going on during the event, and to really make it come off, I need to be just kind of on the sidelines, making things move correctly. So yeah, I think, as you said, as you alluded to, there's a challenge, I think, in the world of chess, that there's all this great intake online. Online chess is very popular, but we need to convert those online people to over-the-board players. And I think one of the ways you do that is you create a great experience. What can you offer in person that somebody can't get online? And then you try to accentuate those properties. And one of the things is just having, the little things that we do at our tournament, like the little name tent flags with your name and your flag and your rating, having really nice environment. We're in a hotel ballroom in a 4-star hotel. It's all very comfortable. It's very nice. There's a social aspect to this. You have your chess friends that you kind of see on a regular basis. So we just try to really kind of go after those things that we can offer that online can't, to try to attract those online players to over the board play.
Yeah, just to highlight a few other things you mentioned in what you sent me, you've got a photographer, you've got a Twitch streamer, as you mentioned, the social dynamic, but also putting on a social event on, I believe it's Saturday night, within the weekend, even a first aid team you mentioned. So let me ask you, Craig, like, where did you come up with all these ideas? And is there any tournament or field outside of chess that you're drawing inspiration from?
I mean, I would say that this upcoming tournament is our third one. So each time you learn a little something new. And I don't really know. I don't remember where the first aid team idea came from, but it's a good question. I don't really remember, but as soon as I heard it, and there's something called the Civil Defence here in Ireland, which are kind of a volunteer force related to the military, and they have first aid teams that will kind of attend your event, essentially, as long as you kind of feed them and give them somewhere to hang out. So when you get 140 players plus their families, it's anything's possible. Now I'm not so much worried about broken bones or anything like that. There's no fist flying or anything like that, but I am concerned about things maybe like cardiac events or something like that. I don't want to be the one doing CPR, essentially. Right. I want a professional there, and I want people to feel comfortable that if something does happen, there is a professional there to help with that. In terms of some of the other things, social media, obviously, we're all aware about. So that didn't require a lot of investigation. That's just, hey, we need to have some social media attached to this. The documentary, certainly I drew inspiration from Welcome to Wrexham, which is popular at the moment. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that.
No.
Well, it's a documentary on Netflix following the Wrexham football team. Ryan
Okay.
Reynolds and Rob McIlharney bought this
Okay.
team in Wales. Anyways, and there's also another documentary called Word Wars. It was about Scrabble from decades ago. The point is that these documentaries, they're not following the top flight of their sport. Word Wars were Word Wars is about Scrabble.
Yeah.
Competitive Scrabble, and Welcome Wrexham is about a team trying to get into the football league, which is the lower levels of English football. So what that what all those two documents told me was that you don't need to be Magnus Carlsen to have something interesting to say about chess. You can be kind of a lower level sort of thing. It's the characters that drive this. It's getting people invested in the story. That is sort of what can make a document interesting. So, anyways, I thought, wouldn't it be great if we did something like that? Someone following the tournament for the weekend and essentially kind of reached out to the right people and made that happen. Yeah, I mean, all that sort of stuff is, innovation. Like you say, photographer. Our tagline, if I can go on a little bit, is making players feel like professionals. We want to treat everyone like they're Magnus Carlsen, if I can use that analogy. We have a photographer. He tries to get a candid photograph of everybody playing their games, because that's not often something people get. You maybe you take a photograph with some people at some point, but you studying the board, honest photographer, professional photography yourself, that's just a nice thing to have to take away with. So that and a bunch of other things too. Yes, that I'm sure maybe we might touch on later. Are we try to differentiate ourselves from the tournament by offering that premium experience.
Excellent. And you mentioned in the documentary you learned some lessons in prior versions of the tournament. Can you think of anything specific, either from year one or year two, where after it was over, you thought, wow, I really need to adjust how we do such and such?
Well, I mean, the big thing from the documentary was, the documentary, we talk about it in the documentary, but in the Blitz tie breaks in the documentary, there was a lot of fallout from that after the event. People onto sponsors and threatening to contact FIDE and things of this nature, things that were giving me sleepless nights.
Can you explain the context for listeners?
Sure. The context. So if you watch the documentary, you'll get a taste of this. Basically, in the terms of the event on the website, it said if there's a tie between first, second, and third, then there will be a blitz playoff. 2 blitz 3+2 games to differentiate first, second, and third. Now, some people didn't know that, basically. And so one guy, the guy who's in the documentary, he quickly offered a draw in the 5th round with his opponent, thinking then that if he gets around with a draw with this guy, then he'll be they'll be tied on points, but he'll win because of whatever reasons, the Buchholz stuff. He didn't realize it was blitz tiebreak, and then when he realized who he was playing, and this young guy was really good at blitz. He might not have done that if he had realized it was going to be a blitz game. He wouldn't have offered a draw. So put himself in a bad situation. There were some others that I won't go into that were perhaps even more emotional, but people just not realizing that it was going to be blitz playoffs, and a lot of bad feeling after the tournament and a lot of fallout that I had to deal with. So yes, it was in the terms, it was on the website, it was all there to be seen. Again, like I said in the documentary, if I'd have realized what was coming, I would have taken the 10 seconds to say, hey, everybody, if you're tied on first, second, or third, it's going to be a blitz playoff, and save myself the headache. But some of these things are like in anything in life, experience is sometimes hard won, and you just got to take your licks and learn from it and move on.
Tie breaks are always so contentious, whether it be like, the top level and the candidates and stuff. Chess players love to argue about tie break systems, myself included. So
yeah, and our arbiter column in the documentary points out, the first thing he says is there is no fair tie break. They're just different ways to separate first, second, and third, or whoever. They're not intrinsically fair. None of them are. It's just you pick one and go with it. So it is what it is.
Yeah. And so you had Grandmaster Alex Baborin, who, of course, Soviet emigre, but Irish stalwart, been around for forever. Used to, I think it's no longer active. Wrote a great chess newsletter for many years. Is it? And you had many, like a handful of other titled players as well. Is that a priority for you, or is it more just put on the best event and whoever shows up shows up?
Yeah, it's not a top priority. It is something that gives the tournament a bit more gravitas. So I'm not, if I had the choice between, if someone said you can have all title players, or not, or you could just have, some and your kind of unrated players as well. I would want the whole range. I would not, this is for the, your, yes, title players, obviously, but this is also for your common man, as it were, or woman. We want everyone to have a great experience. That's why we have 4 sections, under 1200s and through the whole range. So yeah, I reach out to title players, and obviously some I am going after, but it's not a top priority. It's something that we kind of do, but it's not the whole point.
Right. And obviously this is a relatively small scale event. First place is in the neighborhood of $1,000/euros/pounds. Are there discussions about conditions when you reach out to titled players? Like, do you have to offer them anything on top of that, or is it more just a matter of making a connection?
I wouldn't want to go into the details, but sure. I mean, there are conditions generally. It depends, obviously. The higher title that you are, the more I'm willing to offer you something. But yeah, I mean that's just part of the game. And in fact, FIDE helped us out last year with a bit of money, and part of their thing is, here's some grant money, but in return, we want you to help feed the mid-level title players, maybe not FMs, but like your double GMs, your IMs, your GMs, those kind of level players. The super GMs, obviously they've got their own stuff going on. They've got money coming in. They're fine.
Right.
But sort of what my friend described as, and this is not insult, I hope this doesn't come across, but what he described to me as the Burger King GMs, the GMs out there who travel around playing tournaments and basically end up making sort of a minimum wage sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I want to help them out. I want to be part of the ecosystem that allows these people to exist. And again, and I'd say also particularly to women players.
Yeah.
So when we talk about conditions, we talk about GMs, WGMs, IMs, WM. I treat GMs and WGMs the same. So whatever I'm willing to offer GM, I'm willing to offer WGM, and that's what we try to do to kind of, all the things in place to help women and to promote women and get more women involved. That's what I do as part of what I do to try to make that happen.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome and admirable. And Craig, you told me, we had chatted a bit last week, just sort of a warm-up chat, and you mentioned that all this is done on a nonprofit basis. Could you speak a little about sort of the profit motive or lack thereof, and how that philosophy came to be in running this tournament?
Sure. Honestly, it just never even occurred to me to try to make a profit. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's my fault. But I just, for me, as I said at the beginning, it's an ego thing. It's about making the best possible product rather than making money. I mean, what could I really pay myself and have a good tournament? It wouldn't be a lot of money. And so I would much rather, and by the way, there's lots of other people contributing to this that don't get paid. I'm not the only one. So, there's a bunch of people all pulling in the same direction, all with the desire just to have an amazing tournament for people. And it's not, I mean, some people get paid, obviously, the photographer, the graphic artist, the Twitch streamer, they get paid, but there are plenty of us who don't. And again, I think it's just, we want to put the best possible event together and put a good light on Irish chess and put a great event out for all the players and for all the people who come here from abroad to play in the event as well.
Really, it's extremely generous. And let me ask, Greg, I'm just curious about the nuts and bolts. Say say that because you're doing such a good job marketing and because you're generating positive word of mouth about the tournament, that the number of entrants doubles. Now, I assume some of the money goes back into the prize fund, but if you do end up generating excess revenue, like, first of all, obviously I think you're entitled to it, but from what you say, that's not your model. So what would happen with the excess revenue?
Sure. So first of all, that would be what we call a good problem,
right?
And long may that come on. I think, without having really ever thought about this, if I had any excess money, I think what we would do is we'd buy smart boards, because last year we had, I think, 31 smart boards, and again, we didn't that covered the whole master section, and then we spread the rest across the other 3 sections. So every section had so we had 11 boards in the master section. So then we had another 20 across the other 3 sections. So the top 5, 6, 7 boards, even in lower sections, were smart boards. Now, in my mind, ultimately the goal is every board being a smart board, every board being transmitted online and being available as a PGN for both players as soon as the game ends. So if I had extra money, then I would just, that I didn't need, maybe we take a break to dinner or something like that.
Right.
But after that, it would be buy smart boards so that one day every single game would be played on a smart board.
Okay. That makes sense. And this podcast has been going for a while, and obviously I'm friendly with the people down in Charlotte at the Charlotte Chess Center. And I remember years ago when people would say, why don't you have DGT boards? And they just weren't there yet. And now they do. So again, admire your willingness to sort of reinvest. Now, Craig, as I think about what you've built over these first couple years, if I try to put myself in the shoes of someone like starting from scratch, to me, one of the first friction points, and possibly biggest, is like where to have the tournament and how much to pay for it. Now, obviously, once you have a relationship in place, that's probably not as big a headache as some other things. But in your first edition, when you can't have a tournament without a place to play. So what were those initial conversations like with hotels or banquet halls or whatever it may have been, aside from the beautiful looking hotel where you've ended up?
Sure. So the first year was a hotel which we no longer are associated with. The second year was the hotel that we'll be doing the third year, and hopefully going forward will be that hotel. For us, we had, starting out with knowing nothing, I received a lot of advice from the Irish Chess Union. So I reached out to our national governing body. They put me in contact with our tournament director, Alex Babern's son, Ivan Babern. And so him and I had some Zoom calls kind of every few weeks as I kind of got myself going, tried to understand what I need to do, what needed to happen. And I it's been so long, I don't recall what actually brought me to our initial hotel. But I did think, I'll tell you what, the first thing we were going to do it at the local university. And then that kind of wasn't really working. So then we switched to the hotel because there'd been an event there many, many years before, a chess event. And once they said yes, and I understood the prices, and I kind of had an idea of the budget, what it might be if we had 100 people, I said, okay, well, that's fine. We can do it here. So it was just, I said, we're going to get 100 players, hopefully, fingers crossed. And I budgeted off of that. And then I kind of wrote down, I created a budget, said, okay, well, we need this much for the venue. We need to pay, this person, and we'll need this for that. And then I came with a budget. And then that was my Bible, if you will. That's how I kind of, that my reference for whatever I could and couldn't do. So you kind of have I'd love to do this, but this has to happen first. So if we get down to this much, if we have this much money, we can do this. But if we have this much money, we can do that as well. And you just kind of give and take as you realize how much money you are or not going to have. I will say, in terms of venues, at least in Ireland, I definitely wanted to have it in the ballroom, to have a nice, comfortable, spacious area. But the problem there is that you're then competing with weddings.
Right.
And that is why, why we ended up in a new hotel. And it's why, now that I've got my claws in there, I will never let go. And it's also why it's in February. because that's not wedding season necessarily. So I can never beat out a wedding at a hotel because they'll bring in more money. So all I can do now is kind of develop this relationship I have with the hotel, and just hold on for dear life that they don't throw me out, basically.
Okay. And do you mind, feel free to not answer. I mean, just thinking about weddings, I think of the astronomical amount of money my wife and I spent, which, I mean, wasn't some lavish wedding, but it's always a lot of money
Sure.
to pay for a wedding. So that actually, I hadn't made that connection, but that gives me a personal ballpark. But are you able to get into any more specifics about like how much it costs to rent a hotel for a weekend, general ballpark, or would you rather not say?
No. I should know. I think, it must be in the sort of 1,500 to 2,000 range.
Okay.
Just for the ballroom. There might be another room or two that we'd need to rent for an analysis room, but in that sort of region there.
Okay.
Now, there are other tournaments who have great relationships with local hotels, like down in Ennis. I know they pay way, way, way less, although they don't get a ballroom. So ballroom is definitely the higher end way to go. But in our opinion, it's worth it. And by the way, the Diamond Coast Hotel where the tournament is, great hotel, great people, and a lot of people raved about the hotel and venue and the playing space.
Okay. And are there negotiations around the number of people that wind up staying at the hotel, or is that, and like discount rates for the guests, or is that just kind of implicit with the whole thing?
I mean, there's negotiations in the sense that I say, we need some discounted rooms, please. And they say, okay, here's how many you get. And I say, can we have some more? And they say, we'll see.
Okay.
So, at this point, my goal for this year is to try to fill the hotel with just chess players. So there's 99 rooms in the hotel. I think maybe 6 are booked out to other people at the moment. And if I can get everybody else to rent a room, all the other players to rent rooms, then that would be amazing, because that allows us to do a few more interesting things. The space becomes ours. The whole space in the hotel becomes ours in a sense. If 99% of the people in the hotel are playing the tournament, I'm a little bit freer to kind of put things maybe in the lobby or something like that. So that's definitely a goal for this year, is to pack the hotel if possible. And yes, there are discounted rates, but at the moment that number is limited. So that's why I'm trying to encourage people to book as soon as possible, so they do get that rate.
Okay. And as we wrap up, Craig, a couple things I'd like to hear more about. Number one, going to ask you for some closing advice for people who maybe are a few years behind your timeline, and 2, just like to get into your own chest a little bit before we say goodbye. So number one, if someone's listening to this and is inspired by you and wants to run their own tournament, whether it be in the US or elsewhere in Europe or wherever it may be, shout out to the person from Australia who sent me some games today. I love that there's people from all over, and the chess reaches so many places. What advice would you give for getting started, like for a potential organizer?
My advice is it's like anything. It's like, just get started. Just, decide you're going to do it, pick a date, find a venue, work out a budget, make sure that all kind of makes sense financially, and then just do it, and do your best. And then at the end of it, evaluate what happened, maybe send out some questionnaires, see what the players thought, and then and you'll know some things you did wrong or could have done better anyway. But just do it, and then once you've done it, you'll make it better the next time, and then after that, make it even better after that time. And these things they'll evolve naturally. So I wouldn't worry too much about year 3 and 4 when you're getting started. Do it, just do it, and you'll learn on the job, and do your best, and then just have a culture of improvement, and do your best to make it better every year, and the people will come.
Okay, like working on your chess game.
Yeah.
And we have a question from a Patreon supporter of the pod. This is from Chris Wainscott, who I know has worked as a tournament director and does a lot of stuff in his community in Wisconsin. And Chris asks, he says, Craig, with so many chess projects, it always seems as though they're one person away from falling apart. If one person, I think he means you, is no longer able or willing to participate, that's often the death of the project. Are you putting protections in place so that doesn't happen to your initiative?
Certainly, I agree that yes, there's usually a driving force, and if that person no longer exists, then it probably will fall apart. I wouldn't say I put any protections in place. It is something I think about. We've had some big tournaments here in Ireland, particularly one called Bunratty, which was incredibly popular.
Was that the one in like in a
Castle?
distillery or something? Oh, a castle. Okay.
Castle, Bunratty Castle.
Okay.
And you get loads and loads of GMs and high rated players, lots of them, so many. Now their thing was it's not FIDE rated, and it's kind of I don't want to say it. I don't say drinking, but just say a very social event.
Right.
So that was their vibe. And
maybe that's why I thought it was in a distillery.
Yeah. They got knocked back, I think, because of COVID, and then the hotel had repairs, and then I don't know. So they seem to be dying a death. But yeah, you're right. I mean, your Patreon score is right. That is the case, and it's something I think about, but it's not something I've done anything about at the moment. I think really, there was somebody I could pass it on to, but I haven't really kind of installed systems in place so that this would continue on without me. But it is something I think about, and hopefully it was something I will kind of put more effort to in the future.
Great. Okay. And yeah, we'll try to do an interview or two with a participant in the tournament once it's all over in February. Obviously, anyone listening in a proximate area should definitely go and check out Sligo, as I definitely would if I were on the same continent. So in closing, Craig, I mean, obviously this, along with your family and professional responsibilities, has to keep you plenty busy. Does this sort of take the place of actually playing chess for you, or are you able to still get some games in?
I do occasionally get to play. Not as much as if I was a 20-year-old unmarried man, I suspect.
Right.
But we had the Irish Chess Union AGM a few weeks ago, and I thought, well, I kind of want to go. And then I was like, oh, well, I'll pick Dublin, by the way, is about a 2.5 hour drive from Sligo. And I thought, okay, well, it's a long drive just for that. Okay, but they've got a rapid tournament just before the AGM. All right, I need to go to this sports store and pick some stuff up. Okay, great. So if I do all that stuff, then it kind of becomes more worthwhile. And so I went, played in this rapid tournament, had a good time, went to the AGM, and then drove home. Again, occasionally, I brought my family with me to Ennis last time they had a tournament. My kids' first time staying in a hotel, so they love that.
Right, of course.
And I got to play in some chess games while they were doing whatever they were doing. So again, it's not easy. You've got to kind of really make things try to work for that. It has to be a special occasion. But yeah, occasionally I still get, a tournament here or there.
Glad to hear it, as it should be. And last thing before we say goodbye, Craig, I just realized when we chatted last week, you explained your personal background to me, but listeners may be noting your distinct lack of Irish accent. So
yeah, sure.
Could you explain
it's not a Sligo accent? No.
Could you explain your personal background?
Sure. So my father was officer in the United States Air Force, and my mother's British. So I'm American and British citizen, dual citizen, and I'm born in the UK, US, UK, back and forth my whole life, basically. Mostly from Virginia, shout out UVA. But I ended up kind of in England in my late 20s, early 30s, which is when I met my wife, who's Irish, and she's from Sligo. So we got married, kids, and then she wanted to come back to Ireland. Wherever I lay my hat, that's my home, as I say, because I lived up kind of a transient lifestyle as a kid. So I'm comfortable wherever. So we came back to Sligo, and so yeah, we live in Sligo, Ireland, and that's why I have an American accent.
Okay, yeah, and it looks beautiful in the pictures. So I'll have to come visit you someday, Craig.
Ben, there's another free entry. That's that's your conditions. I'm calling it right now. Free entry, no problem.
All right, listeners, you heard that, right? Okay, well, Craig, thanks a lot, and really just want to say thank you on behalf of the chess community, and thanks to so many other people. I can't interview everyone, obviously, but there's so many unsung heroes that make the chess world go, and really appreciate all of the efforts that you and so many others are doing to improve the chess world. So thank you, Craig.
Oh, no problem, Ben. It's my pleasure. And again, if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it.
All right. Well, thanks. And hopefully you'll catch a few listeners in Sligo in February 2024.
Hopefully. Look forward to seeing them there.
Okay. Take care, Craig.
Okay. Thanks, Ben.